The dining room at my parents' house was filled with the aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie. Everyone was smiling, laughing, exchanging pleasantries as they had for years. I watched my family members raise their glasses, toasting to honesty and mutual respect. My stomach tightened. For 15 years I had bitten my tongue, but today something had shifted inside me. I could no longer pretend. My hands trembled slightly as I prepared to speak the truth that would likely shatter our carefully constructed family image. Before I tell you about the moment that forever changed my life, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you value truth more than comfortable pretense. I grew up in what everyone in our suburban Boston neighborhood considered the perfect family. My father, Andrew, was a successful corporate attorney. My mother, Diana, a respected pediatrician. My older sister, Jessica, was the academic star, and my younger brother, Thomas, was the athletic prodigy. I was the middle child, the artistic one, somewhat of an anomaly in our achievement-oriented clan. From the outside, the Walters family was the gold standard of American success. My parents were fixtures in the community, known for their charitable contributions and involvement in local politics. At social gatherings, they would often speak eloquently about integrity, compassion, and family values. Our home was featured in a local magazine, once described as a place where traditional values met modern sensibilities. Our family gatherings were warm yet structured affairs. Thanksgiving and Christmas were especially elaborate, with my mother insisting on proper table settings and my father leading ceremonial toasts about gratitude and honesty. We sat around the table sharing stories that reinforced our family narrative of success built on hard work and moral character. As a child, I absorbed these messages wholeheartedly. I believed we were special because we lived by a higher standard. My parents would frequently remind us that character was everything, and that actions should always align with words. My father would say during our Sunday dinners, "Truth is the foundation of trust, and without trust, there is no real relationship." But as I entered my teenage years, small inconsistencies began to appear in the perfect picture. I started noticing the gap between what my parents preached and how they actually behaved when they thought no one important was watching. When I was 16, I got grounded for 2 weeks for lying about where I had gone after school. I had told my parents I was at the library studying when actually I had gone to see a movie with friends. It wasn't a huge transgression, but my father lectured me for an hour about how lying destroys trust. That same night, I accidentally overheard him on the phone, lying to a client about why he hadn't completed some paperwork. He claimed he had been in the hospital, when actually he had been golfing that day. The disconnect was jarring. Around the same time, I noticed how my mother would smile and compliment our neighbor Mrs. Johnson to her face, then turn around and criticize everything from her gardening skills to her parenting style the moment she left. Yet whenever she caught me saying something negative about someone, she would lecture me about the importance of kindness and not judging others. I tried to dismiss these contradictions as normal adult complexities that I would understand when I was older. Maybe this was just how the world worked. Maybe the ideals they taught us were aspirational rather than practical. I convinced myself that these were exceptions, not the rule of how my family operated. By the time I graduated from college with an art history degree, the pressure to conform to the family image was intense. My father particularly pushed me toward law school. "That art degree is fine as a hobby, William, but it's time to get serious about your future." Whenever I protested that I wanted to pursue my passion for art restoration, he would remind me of financial security and family tradition. This confused me because at numerous family gatherings, Head publicly stated, "I just want my children to find their passion and pursue it wholeheartedly. I believe in letting them chart their own course." I felt trapped between the family values I had been taught and the family reality I was experiencing. Little did I know these contradictions were just the beginning. Against my parents' wishes, I moved to Chicago to pursue a career in art restoration. The early years were financially challenging. I worked multiple jobs while building my portfolio and skills. During this period, my family's true colors began to show more vividly. When I would call home during those tough first years, the conversation invariably turned to my poor life choices. "Remember when we told you to follow your passion? That was meant for sensible passions, William." My mother would sigh dramatically, reminding me that Jessica had already purchased her first home, while I could barely make rent. The real awakening came during my third year away from home. I ran into Dr. Collins, one of my mother's colleagues, at a conference in Chicago, where I was doing some freelance work, documenting art pieces. We chatted politely, and she mentioned how concerned my parents always seemed when discussing me. "Your mother tells everyone at the hospital that she worries you're throwing your life away on this art thing. They apparently talk about it constantly at their dinner parties." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. While my parents had been telling me they supported my choices, albeit reluctantly, they had been actively undermining me to everyone they knew. The public narrative was entirely different from what they told me directly. Then came the incident with Jessica. My sister had always been the golden child, the one who followed the prescribed path. She went to medical school, married a lawyer, and settled in a wealthy suburb of Boston. When she suddenly faced financial difficulties after her husband temporarily lost his job, I offered to loan her $15,000 from the money I had been saving for years. It was nearly everything I had, but family helps family, right? 6 months later, before she had repaid any of the loan, I discovered through a cousin that Jessica had been telling extended family members that I was struggling in Chicago and that she was worried about my mental health. According to her, my decision to loan her money was a desperate attempt to feel relevant in the family. She had transformed my act of generosity into evidence of my failure. The contrast in treatment between me and my younger brother Thomas became increasingly obvious too. When Thomas decided to change his college major for the third time, requiring an extra year of education, my parents happily covered the additional tuition. When I had asked for help with my first month's rent in Chicago years earlier, my father had lectured me about self-reliance and the importance of standing on my own feet. The hypocrisy continued to pile up. During a family conference call, my father went on at length about the importance of honoring our elders. Yet I knew they had skipped my grandmother's 80th birthday celebration because they had tickets to a fundraising gala they didn't want to miss. My mother frequently guilted me about not visiting home enough. "William family should be a priority," she would say. Yet when I pointed out that she had only visited me once in 4 years despite taking vacations to cities within driving distance of Chicago, she dismissed it with, "That's different. We're the parents." These accumulating incidents took their toll on my mental health. I began experiencing anxiety attacks and periods of depression. Eventually, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who helped me see the patterns of manipulation and double standards that had defined my family relationships. "Your family has created a system where they get to claim the moral high ground while exempting themselves from the very standards they impose on you," Dr. Martinez explained during one session. "Setting healthy boundaries might be necessary for your well-being." After 2 years of therapy, I had developed stronger boundaries and a clearer sense of my own worth. I limited contact with my family to occasions when I felt emotionally prepared to engage with them. I stopped seeking their approval or trying to make them understand my perspective. This approach worked reasonably well, until the Thanksgiving gathering that would change everything. I hadn't planned to attend the family Thanksgiving that year. My art restoration business was finally taking off, and I had legitimate work commitments. But the barrage of guilt-tripping text messages and phone calls wore me down. "After all, it's been 3 years since you've joined us for Thanksgiving, William. Even your cousin Bradley from Seattle is making the effort," my mother pointed out, conveniently ignoring that Bradley was visiting his in-laws who lived 30 minutes from my parents' home. Eventually, I relented, booking a flight to Boston with a sense of impending doom. As I pulled up to the large colonial house where I grew up, my anxiety spiked. The perfectly maintained exterior of the home seemed to mirror the carefully maintained facade of our family relationships. Inside, the greeting ritual began. Hugs that lasted exactly the right amount of time. Questions about my life that were designed to highlight perceived shortcomings rather than express genuine interest. "So, still doing that art thing?" My Uncle Robert asked, his tone suggesting I was engaged in some questionable activity rather than running a legitimate business. "Any special lady in your life yet? or are you still too busy with your paintings? This from Aunt Martha, who had been divorced 3 times. The dining room was a showcase of autumnal perfection. My mother's decorating skills were on full display with tasteful arrangements of gourds, candles, and fall foliage. The table settings were immaculate, the food abundant. It was a picture-perfect scene that masked the dysfunction beneath. Before the meal, my father initiated what had become a family tradition, the gratitude circle. Everyone would share something they were thankful for, ideally, something that reinforced our family values. I am thankful for the honesty and integrity that defines our family. My father began raising his wine glass. In a world where people often compromise their values, we stand firm. My mother followed. I am grateful for the unconditional love we share, and how we always support each other through difficult times. Jessica smiled warmly. I'm thankful that we prioritize family above all else, and always show up for each other. When it came to Thomas, he somewhat reluctantly added, I'm grateful that we value authenticity and being true to ourselves. The extended family members added their own platitudes, each one, making me increasingly uncomfortable with its disconnect from reality. Then my Uncle Frank, my father's brother, began criticizing the neighbor's son who had dropped out of college to start a tech business. That Johnson boy is going nowhere. No discipline, no respect for education. His parents must be devastated. I knew for a fact that Frank's own son had dropped out of 2 colleges and was currently living in Frank's basement at 31, working part-time at a golf course. The hypocrisy was so blatant that I couldn't contain myself any longer. Isn't your son Jason in a similar situation? I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. The table went silent. Frank sputtered. That's completely different. Jason is strategizing his next move. My father shot me a warning glance. William, this isn't the time. But something had broken loose inside me. 15 years of suppressed truth came flooding out. When is the time, Dad? When is the time to talk about how this family claims to value honesty but lives in constant denial? I looked around the table at the shocked faces. What are you talking about? My mother asked, her voice tight. I'm talking about how you all sit here praising family loyalty, when most of you barely communicate with me, except to criticize my choices. I turned to Jessica. I'm talking about how you accepted $15,000 from me when you were struggling, then told everyone I gave it to you because I was mentally unstable and desperate for approval. Jessica flushed red. That's not what I said. You completely misunderstood. I continued, addressing my parents. I'm talking about how you lecture about supporting your children's dreams, but have undermined my career choice at every turn. You talk about family support but paid for Thomas to switch majors multiple times while telling me I needed to learn self-reliance when I asked for help with rent. William, that's enough. My father slammed his hand on the table. You are completely out of line. You toast to honesty but lie to clients. You preach about respecting elders but skipped Grandma's 80th birthday for a gala. Mom talks about judging others while criticizing every neighbor on the block. You guilt me about not visiting but have come to Chicago once in 7 years. By this point, several family members were shouting over each other. My mother had tears streaming down her face. You have no idea what you're talking about. We've always supported you. We've always loved you despite your choices. Despite my choices, I laughed bitterly. There's the truth slipping out. You claim to accept me but actually disapprove of everything I do. And you've made sure everyone else in the family sees me as the failure, the misfit. My father stood up, his face contorted with rage. You ungrateful, self-centered child. We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us. By ruining Thanksgiving with your accusations, none of you can admit a single thing I'm saying might be true. Can you? Even now, you're all doubling down on the lie. The argument escalated further. Aunt Martha suggested I needed professional help. Uncle Robert defended my father's work ethic. Jessica accused me of harboring childish grudges. Thomas sat silently staring at his plate. Finally, my father pointed to the door. I think you should leave, William. When you're ready to apologize and act like part of this family, you're welcome to return. I looked around at the faces of my relatives, some angry, some shocked, some deliberately avoiding eye contact. In that moment, I realized I had been hoping for some acknowledgement, some small recognition of the truth. Instead, I got exactly what I should have expected: collective denial. Without another word, I grabbed my coat and walked out into the cold November evening. I drove to a nearby hotel in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Part of me was horrified at what I had done. Another part strangely relieved. I had finally spoken my truth, even if no one was ready to hear it. The next few days were a blur of angry text messages and voicemails. I was accused of everything from mental instability to drug abuse to jealousy. No one engaged with the substance of what I had said. The collective response was that I had inexplicably lashed out at a loving family who had done nothing but support me. After consulting with Dr. Martinez, in an emergency phone session, I made the difficult decision to temporarily cut contact with my family. I blocked their numbers and emails, giving myself space to process what had happened and recover from the emotional fallout. Over the next several weeks, I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the careful restoration of damaged artwork. There was something therapeutic about bringing beauty back to pieces that had been neglected or harmed over time. I saw parallels with my own life. The patient work of restoring my authentic self after years of family dynamics that had damaged my sense of reality and worth. Dr. Martinez helped me recognize that my family might never acknowledge their contradictions. Their investment in the perfect family narrative was too deep, the cost of honesty too high. It is not your responsibility to make them see the truth, he told me during one session. Your responsibility is to live your life with the integrity they only talk about. 3 months after the Thanksgiving disaster, I received a text from my brother Thomas asking if we could talk. Cautiously, I agreed to a video call. To my surprise, Thomas didn't start with accusations or attempts to get me to apologize. Instead, he said something that validated everything I had been feeling. "I think I understand why you said those things," he told me, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I've been thinking about it a lot. And while I don't agree with how you did it, I can't say you're completely wrong about the double standards." It was the first crack in the united front my family had presented. Thomas shared that my outburst had forced him to reflect on his own experiences. He had started to notice the conditional nature of our parents' approval and the gap between their stated values and actual behavior. Our conversation wasn't easy, and we disagreed on many points, but it was the first honest exchange I had ever had with a family member. 6 months after Thanksgiving, Jessica reached out with a carefully worded email that stopped short of a genuine apology, but acknowledged she may have misrepresented certain situations involving me to other family members. It was progress, even if limited. A full year passed before I agreed to meet my parents for coffee during a business trip to Boston. The meeting was tense and brief. They had not fundamentally changed their perspective, but had at least stopped demanding an apology as a condition for contact. We established a new, more distant relationship with clearer boundaries and fewer pretenses. I no longer attended every family function, participating only when I felt emotionally equipped to manage the dynamics. The idealized image of our perfect family had been permanently damaged, but in its place was developing something more honest, if more limited. Meanwhile, I built a chosen family of close friends who accepted me without conditions. I developed a relationship with Alexandra, an environmental lawyer who valued authenticity and direct communication. With her, I could be fully myself, without fear of criticism or manipulation. We created a home together that truly embodied the values my biological family had only preached. My business thrived as I gained recognition for my restoration work. The patience and attention to detail that made me good at my job also helped me navigate the slow, careful process of rebuilding my life on my own terms. Looking back, I don't regret speaking up at that Thanksgiving dinner, though I sometimes wish I had found a less explosive way to address the issues. The short-term pain was intense, but the long-term liberation was worth it. Today, 5 years later, I maintain limited contact with my family. Our relationships are not close, but they are more authentic. I no longer exhaust myself trying to win approval or meet impossible standards. I no longer pretend to believe in the perfect family narrative. The most valuable lesson I learned through this journey is that real integrity means alignment between words and actions, not just grand statements of principle. Real love accepts rather than seeks to change. Real family supports your authentic self, not just the version that fits their preferred narrative. Sometimes speaking your truth can cost you a false family, but it gives you the chance to find your true self and the relationships that truly matter. Have you ever had to confront hypocrisy in your own family? How did you handle it, and what was the outcome? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more authentic life experiences. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it gives you courage to honor your own truth, whatever that might be.